The first season of The Wheel of Time was marred by some unfortunate circumstances. Seemingly, everything went wrong for the show's production, as they lost a major cast member midway through filming. The initial proposed 10-episode order was reduced last minute by 2 whole episodes, and production was stopped midway through filming due to the pandemic, disrupting the production schedule and greatly hindering the final product once they were allowed to return to work. Due to this nightmare scenario, the first season of the show was greatly hindered and was subpar as a result. The show's second season was the opportunity for this production team to prove themselves and to show what they can do when everything doesn't go wrong. In many ways, Season 2 was make or break for The Wheel of Time, as if it was another poor season of television, far fewer people would be willing to continue to give it the benefit of the doubt. The pressure was on, and I am happy to say that I not only think that The Wheel of Time Season 2 is better than the first season in every conceivable way, with the one exception being Rand's hair.
I've seen him with my own 2 eyes. He's got shit hair.
But it is in itself a good season of television. The visual effects look far better. The costuming and sets look to be a step up. The actors, who were by no means bad in the first season, feel even more comfortable and at home in their roles. And the writing itself seems to be improved, as the showrunners tell a more streamlined story. Even though I still think an 8-episode order is too few for a show like The Wheel of Time, the team managed to do their best with what they were given, as the runtime for each episode in Season 2 is longer than the prior season, telling as much story as they were allowed to. They even removed the opening credits sequence, which, even though it is in itself fantastic, its removal allowed for more time spent telling the characters' stories. Every minute is precious, and I think the extra long episode runtimes go a long way to help the season. Also, just to give some context about my experience with the source material, I just finished the 8th book in the series on my first read-through. One thing I feel I should note is that Amazon's adaptation of Robert Jordan's book series continues to deviate from the source material. For longtime fans of the book series, coming to terms with some of these changes can be very difficult, and I think for book readers to enjoy the show, some level of separation is needed. I know some people will be unable to enjoy the show because of this, and as unfortunate as it is, if you're unable to separate the books from the show, you probably just aren't going to enjoy watching this adaptation. I definitely think this is a mark against the show, but at the end of the day, I still think it's a good television series in its own right. Over the course of this video, I will be discussing Season 2 of The Wheel of Time in detail, highlighting the successes and failures of the show. I will be looking at each of the main characters' storylines throughout the season. Spoiler warning for Season 2 of The Wheel of Time.
What do you think Rand will do when he sees his friends are all lost?
He will break.
One of the biggest strengths of the season is its villains. The Dark is home to some of the most interesting characters of the show, and we really get to dive into them a lot more in Season 2. The Forsaken that we get to spend the majority of the season with are Ishamael and Lanfear, both of which are incredibly captivating, and whenever they are on screen, you end up leaning in as you anticipate what they are going to do or say. The actors give them a real sense of gravitas. They feel like ancient beings, with thousands of years of history between them. One of the ideas I really like that the show emphasized is that
there are many paths to walk through the night.
Even though they have all sworn themselves to the Dark One, they still each have their own agendas and are going to plot and scheme against each other in order to get what they want.
Lanfear's betrayed us.
The show makes a very deliberate decision to show the audience each of the Darkfriends' ideals and why it is that they ultimately chose to side with the Dark. This was done to show the audience why someone would turn, giving each of them reasons that can be understood.
If the shadow is going to be a hypothetical choice for our characters, then you want to see people who made that choice for reasons that you really understand. And so we've gone out of our way to every person who's chosen the shadow in the show. You hopefully have some kind of emotional understanding of why they did it.
Where all the other Darkfriends and Forsaken chose the Dark for their own personal reasons, Ishamael chose it because he is a true believer.
Alone of all the chosen, I actually believe in the Dark.
He genuinely believes in the Dark and wants to put an end to the endless cycle of death and rebirth.
I'm going to break the wheel.
He sees the constant pain of the world and just wants to put an end to it all, and despite his immortality, he longs for death. path. I think these all make for a Shamael to be a really interesting character, as well as frightening, as he is willing to go to extremes some of the others sworn to the dark won't. Unlike a Shamael, Lanfear was pushed to the dark because of love. Love is an incredibly powerful emotion, and despite a lot of the good love can bring to the world, at its extremes it can be incredibly dangerous. Lanfear was spurned by her former lover, Lews-Therin Telamon, the dragon. When he chose another woman over her, she was so devastated that she turned to the dark and swore her oaths.
Desperation opens the mind to more interesting choices, as it did for you.
After she is freed by a Shamael, she starts up her relationship with Rand, the reincarnation of her love. When she tells Rand that she cares about him and loves him, she is being genuine.
I'm the only one who actually cares about you, Rand.
For her, winning would be having Rand turn to the dark so that they can be together, giving her a happily ever after. I think this character history really makes her relationship with Rand all the more compelling, as well as making Lanfear a wild card, as she is all too willing to go against the other Forsaken and Darkfriends to get what she wants. There's also this underlining question of whether Lanfear loves Rand or merely loves the pieces of Rand that are Lews-Therin. She also has some of the best moments of the entire season, as she casually destroys Cairhien in order to free Rand, and you just get the feeling like everyone is beneath her.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Little moments like comparing how she opens a waygate compared to how Moiraine does it puts her power into perspective. Liandrin and Barthanes are also good examples of the audience seeing why someone would turn. Liandrin swore her oaths to the dark in order to save her son's life. This goes a long way to humanize Liandrin, who up till this point was a pretty deplorable character. Barthanes turned to the dark as a means of rising the status of his family. Tired of being from a tiny, insignificant house, his connections to the dark helped to raise his position so that he was to be wed to the Queen of Cairhien. A lot of stories are only as compelling as their antagonists. I think the Wheel of Time does an excellent job this season of establishing the dark and why it might be the path some would choose to walk. The characters themselves are all compelling and bring a lot to the season.
It never made sense to me, Moiraine. What you were feeling, Shamael didn't steal you. Not even a Forsaken could do that alone. It is a shield that he's tied off.
I have mixed feelings about the Moiraine Lan story this season. I think it gets off to a slow start, and really only has a few excellent scenes that serve to carry the storyline as a whole. To an extent, it feels like Rosamund Pike, Moiraine's actress, is almost too big for the character, and as a result, the show has to find ways to make her the focus of the show, giving her things to do at the expense of others. Pike really is a fantastic actress, and nails every scene she is in, but a lot of her material feels superfluous to the main narrative, until they attach her to Rand, where she starts to draw focus from him. Moiraine's entire Season 2 storyline is a television original, which probably isn't much of a surprise to book readers, as Moiraine barely appears in the second book of the series. At the end of last season, when Moiraine was cut off from the One Power, I was immediately pretty down on it. I've talked about in some of my other videos how I hate the storytelling device of temporarily stripping a character's powers. It never has any lasting effects for the character, and the return of their powers almost always feels like an inevitability. I understand that it is a way for the writers to explore the character in a different way. I just feel like it is one of the least satisfying methods for achieving that. Also, in order to sell Moiraine's hopelessness and desperation as a result of being cut off, they have her and most of the other characters put on blinders, preventing them from even considering the possibility that she wasn't stilled. Lan is the only one who even suggests this.
When he cut me off with a flick of his wrist.
But it takes 8 eyes to die to cut someone off. Alone he couldn't, no matter
You have no conception of the power they wield.
Someone as smart as Moiraine should have considered a couple of other possibilities, other than her being stilled. For instance, she knows what a man being gentled looks like as the power is ripped from them. She also knows that it is possible to shield someone from the One Power, even if Aes Sedai are not currently capable of tying it off.
You've been shielded from the One Power. Don't worry, it's temporary.
She knows that what happened to her was nothing like a man being gentled, and when Lan says that Ishamael wouldn't be able to still her on his own, Moiraine says that the Forsaken are so powerful that he could probably do it. But she doesn't apply that same logic, the Forsaken are extremely powerful, and we have no idea what they are capable of, to the idea of a shield being put on her and tied off. Also, despite having her spend a large amount of time with Rand, one of the few men who can channel on the show, they don't have him notice the mail weaves tied off on her until it is time for her to be freed. I know he has to look at her with the one power in the show to see it, but where we have seen the one power overflowing in him, and him not being able to control it all the time, I feel like he would have seen the knot at some point. Where I think they do a good job with Moiraine's character is how uncertain and overwhelmed she is. She spent the whole first season thinking that the last battle was about to take place at the Eye of the World, and when she is proven wrong, everything she thought she knew is thrown into chaos, as she has to try and figure out what to do next. I also think being wrong about the last battle has shaken her confidence, making her second guess the decisions she has made, and the decisions she will have to make in the future.
I was wrong, Lan. I was wrong about everything. We didn't defeat the Dark One. We set his strongest lieutenant free.
As a result of her own self-doubt, she pushes everyone around her away, not sure who she can trust, and not wanting the people she cares about to fall victim because of the mistakes that she has made. I think Rosamund Pike does a tremendous job of showing all of Moiraine's conflicting emotions and self-doubt throughout the season.
You have to trust someone. At some point, Moiraine.
I also think this could have been conveyed without her fake stilling, which I think only serves to muddy the waters. The Moiraine family drama feels inessential, but is by no means bad. It's interesting to see Moiraine's origins, and it also gives us another example of why someone would turn to the dark. But for the most part, I would have liked for the show to use this time to further flesh out different storylines. Moiraine and Lan's relationship, something that was rock solid in the first season, starts to come undone as a result of her being shielded and their bond still being masked. In the first season, I think the show did a great job showing how these two have been together for so many years, and truly understand who each other are. Obviously, the masking of the bond complicates things and makes it more difficult for them to communicate. But I feel like the show leaned a bit too much in this direction, as the mature relationship we saw between the two in the first season is completely gone, and the pair act like upset children. Moiraine is trying to push Lan away, and in order to do so, she tells him that they were never equals. She sends him away to go to Warder Camp as she goes to find Rand. I don't know, interactions like this just felt melodramatic to me, especially with how Lan reacts to it. I think it's pretty clear that Rafe has this fascination with the Aes Sedai Warder bond, and wants to delve into it at every chance he gets. Lan talking with Alanna, Ivan, and Maxim about his bond with Moiraine felt like filler. The two strongest elements to the Moiraine storyline are her two big emotional moments that she has with Lan and Swan. The moment with Swan is pretty emotional, as the two find themselves at odds on what to do with the Dragon Reborn. Swan wants to cage Rand and only bring him out at the last battle, using him as a weapon, whereas Moiraine is fully loyal to him and believes he needs to have his freedom, as the experience he gains will be the reason that he is able to defeat the Dark One. She thinks that under her guidance, he will rise to the occasion and become the dragon they need. Moiraine refuses to listen to Swan, and so she conspires to break Rand free from Swan's custody and help him escape to Falme. Swan becomes aware of Moraine's intentions and confronts her at the Waygate. She commands Moiraine, and using the power of the oath that Moiraine swore in the first season, puppets her to close the gate. The betrayal feels palpable, with their relationship never to be the same again.
No, if you have ever loved me, don't do this.
Command you to close the Waygate.
Just an aside to this moment, I wasn't a huge fan of the flashback scene centering on these two at the beginning of episode 7. I think it's meant to illustrate to the audience again just how much these two love and care for each other, but the future plans they were making felt a bit out of character to me. The idea of retiring from the White Tower and getting married in a tiny fish shack might sound nice and romantic, but it feels wrong for the characters and Aes Sedai as a whole. There is an idea in the books that you don't decide when you are done with the White Tower. Rather, the White Tower decides when it is done with you. I doubt that the White Tower would just let two channelers as powerful as Moiraine and Swan are to retire and leave their duties. Maybe this wasn't an issue for anyone else, but it just felt off to me. Her other powerful moment, with Lan, comes after she has been freed from Ishamael's shield, and the two are walking on the beaches near Falm. Lan tries to get her to unmask the bond, and she is hesitant to do this, as she wants to know for certain that this is something that he wants. Lan observes that part of Moiraine's reluctance to unmask the bond is because she doesn't want him to know how scared and uncertain she is about everything that's going on. One of the major themes for Moiraine this season is that she can't do everything herself, and that she needs to trust somebody. Her deciding to unmask the bond is the culmination of her arc, as she very literally lets Lan back in, so that they can tackle what's to come together. It's a beautiful moment as we see the weaves surrounding them and their bond is restored. It almost felt like how some married couples decide to renew their vows. Something that I thought was pretty emblematic of Moiraine and Lan's storyline was their big encounter on the beach. With a boat full of Damane shielding Rand, and a random group of Seanchan soldiers running down the beach where literally no one is, both things felt like they were reasons invented to give Moiraine and Lan something to do. In both instances, it feels like the show trying to give them a big moment, but for me, that almost felt like its only purpose. Despite some strong performances, I feel like a mixed bag is the best way to describe the Moiraine and Lan story this season.
What are we? Wolf brother, they call us.
I feel like what we get to see from Perrin this season is a massive step up from season 1. In the first season, Perrin was almost in a comatose state after the death of his wife, and we didn't really get to see much development from him or very many interesting scenes. This season, I think, does a better job of handling him, and he also serves as a vehicle to introduce a number of new elements into the show. Where we first catch up with him, he is with the Shienaran on the hunt for the Horn of Valir. The hunt for the Horn is one of the biggest plot lines from the second book, with the importance of the horn being emphasized as it is a crucial tool in the fight against the Dark One. I enjoyed the show's depiction of the hunt for the horn, but wish we spent more time on it. In the show, it's cut short by the end of the second episode, when the Seanchan attack. I would have wished to stay with Perrin and company for a longer period of time, to further build upon the idea of the horn. The lack of time spent hunting the horn, and even the lack of talk about what the horn actually does, makes the huge role it plays in the finale feel a little undercooked. More time spent on the horn would have also given more time to flesh out characters like Ingtar, Uno, and Massima, who are all interesting in their own right. We do get a pretty interesting interaction between Perrin and Ingtar early on, as after coming across the bodies of some Shienaran traders, Ingtar opts to give them a proper burial instead of leaving them to rot. Perrin is confused by this gesture made by Ingtar, as Perrin only sees the worst in someone who has turned to the dark. He's angry, and many of his feelings stem back to how the two rivers used to welcome Padan Fain into their village, only for him to lead the Trollocs there. Perrin has a tremendous feeling of anger and hatred surrounding Darkfriends, and at the same time, this makes him feel afraid about what he might do.
There's a rage inside of me. And the closer we get to finding him, the more it grows.
Also, this conversation pretty much spells it out for the audience that Ingtar is a Darkfriend. When talking about the traitor, he is talking about himself in a lot of ways, and wants others who find out to understand that there was a reason for the decision that he made.
Perhaps Fain had a reason for doing what he did.
The show actually filmed Ingtar's Darkfriend reveal for episode 8, but decided to cut it from the official release. I think this makes sense as we never really spent enough time with the character in the show for his reveal to be as impactful as it needed to be. If anything, if they had included it, it would have felt like a random distraction from the rest of the events unfolding in Falm. One night, when Perrin is tucked tightly in his bed, the Seanchan attack.
What are you doing here?
Nothing, Rumi, just watching you sleep.
The Seanchan are one of the major antagonists this season, and we are first introduced to them here in Perrin's storyline. Perrin is dragged from his bed, then dragged some more. Then after he goes back to sleep, he is dragged some more.
Stop doing that.
While Perrin is being dragged around, there's a battle going on around him. The battle itself is pretty interesting, and there are some great visuals that accompany it. When the dust settles, the Seanchan are victorious, and we get our first really good look at them. I think the show absolutely nailed the look and feel of the Seanchan. They immediately feel incredibly intimidating, dangerous in the skill of their warriors, but also the power of their damane.
The Shan-Chan are incredibly dangerous, and we needed people to be fucking terrified of the Shan-Chan.
They feel like they are a part of the world of the show, while at the same time feeling utterly distinct and alien. You get what they are all about, as they have women who can channel under their control and are adamant about having the survivors bow before them. The Shan-Chan soldiers' bug-like armor also looks incredibly cool and weird in the best way. As they make the survivors swear oaths of fealty to them, I must imagine that a couple of them are just mumbling along. After the hunting party is captured, Perrin is freed by Elias, the wolf brother. In the source material, we actually meet Elias in the first book, but due to time constraints, it had to be cut from the first season. With Rafe having expressed his love of said storyline in the books, I anticipated that Elias tutoring Perrin in his connection to the wolves would take place in some shape during the second season. I think it's pretty well done, as Elias helps to explain to Perrin his wolf visions and what it means to be a wolf brother. It's also through Elias's guidance that Perrin learns to communicate with the wolves, and he makes a new friend in the best boy Hopper. That sure is one hoppy boy. I hope nothing bad happens to him. After walking in a circle, Perrin goes back to the town where the Shan-Chan attacked, so that he can bury the late Uno. Since he's been gone, the Shan-Chan were chased from the town by the White Cloaks, who now occupy it. Perrin meets a caged Aiel woman named Avienda, and a White Cloak named Dane Bornhald. I really enjoy Perrin's dynamic with Dane, as Dane embodies a different vibe than the White Cloaks that we met in Season 1. He shows some compassion to Avienda by giving her water, which is against orders, but he is also resolute in maintaining that she is not to be freed. He has nobility about him, but is also uncompromising in following his ideals. I enjoy his interaction with Perrin and how he refers to him as two rivers. When Perrin sees Valda and decides to bounce, he decides to free Avienda. I have some mixed feelings about the fight that ensues between Avienda and the White Cloaks. On the one hand, it's cool. It also serves to show just how strong the Aiel are, as Avienda takes on the White Cloaks one after the other. Unfortunately though, I felt like the fight was cut in a way that made it hard to follow, so as to make Avienda's impressive feat feel more believable. Dane explicitly tells his men to attack all at once.
Attack all at once on my signal. One at a time and she'll have you.
But a lot of the moments we see, only one or two of the White Cloaks are in view, so we don't know what the others are actually doing. It's not bad, but I feel like it could have been put together in a more visually consistent way. After Perrin and Avienda escape, we get an introduction to the world of the Aiel, a world that we will dive deeper into in the seasons to come. We are introduced to the concept of Jiato, which essentially is an honor system of sorts, where Avienda was saved by Perrin, and as we later learn was the cause of her comrade dying, she has incurred To, which means shame and obligation. The reason the Aiel were moshing was to restore Avienda's Ji for the mistakes that she made that led to her friend's death. She also has obligation to Perrin for saving her life. One thing I will say about Perrin's storyline is that my man be doing a lot of walking. In a weird way, I found a lot of the characters to be in waiting for portions of the season until they were allowed to progress to the next part of their journey. For Perrin, his buffering phase is his walking. For Lan, it's him chilling at the water farm. And for Matt, it's where he almost disappears for 2 episodes as he is in transit to Cairhien. This isn't a huge deal, but it felt like it was worth noting. Perrin and his Aiel crew eventually make their way to Falm, where he is hoping to rescue Loyal and his other buddies from the hunt. Before entering the city, he tells Hopper to wait for him outside, but fearing he might meet a similar fate to Seymour Butts, Hopper decides to disobey Perrin so that he can protect him. During the battle at Falm, it is mostly White Cloaks versus Shan-Chan, and even though Perrin and the White Cloaks have a common enemy, Valda is there and he is carrying a grudge. Hopper steps in to protect Perrin, only for Papa Bornhald to step in on Valda's behalf and kill Hopper. Now Jeffrem seems like a pretty good guy, as he came to the defense of the city of Falm when no one else would. However, by killing the best boy Hopper, in the eyes of many, he gets what's coming to him. As Perrin sees Hopper bleeding out in what is an absolute incredible performance by Hopper's doggy actor, his heart breaks along with the audience's. Perrin is overcome with rage and hunts down Jeffrem. He takes an axe to Jeffrem's chest as Dane watches on. In a lot of ways, this feels like a series of unfortunate events, which only adds to the tragedy of it. This moment will no doubt have lasting consequences for Perrin and Dane, and it's going to be really fun to see all that play out. In conclusion though, it's all Valda's fault.
I am one of you. I have fought by your side times beyond number.
Mat's arc this season was very much a slow burn. It took a while to get going, but by the end, I think Mat has the best moment in the finale. With Mat being recast, the show and new actor, Donald Finn, had the task of bridging the gap between the two performances and make them feel like one character. Recasting is always a difficult situation to navigate, but I think Finn does a great job with the role. The scene that fully won me over was when Liandrin leaves him locked in his cell, and he mimes her locking the door and walking down the hall. This felt like quintessential Mat to me, and got me excited for Finn's portrayal. When we first see Mat this season, he is locked up in a cell in the White Tower as Liandrin's prisoner. He has been there for the past 6 months. Liandrin reads out the letter Perrin sent to Nynaeve and Egwene, lying about some of its contents and that it doesn't mention Mat.
What does he say about me?
I don't believe you're mentioned.
This is an early hint for the audience about Liandrin's true allegiance, but also serves to build the sense of shame and self-hatred that permeates through Mat's character in the show. They integrated Mat's actor leaving into the story, making Mat's early departure and refusal to follow his friends into the ways as him abandoning them, something he feels tremendous guilt about. He feels worthless, like a burden to the people he cares about, and thinks that they are better off without him. Liandrin does her best to feed these insecurities and make Mat feel as small as possible.
You're an insidious coward who mistakes his own moral failings for cunning and wit. You left them. And you'd do it again. It doesn't matter to me, because you don't matter.
Mat has had enough of Liandrin's company and plans his escape. Instead of being armed with a rock hammer and a girly poster, Mat has a spoon and a dresser drawer. He burrows through the wall, and instead of finding freedom, he finds Min. Mat and Min have great chemistry right from the jump, with their personalities complementing each other's very well. Min has a vision of Mat, and Mat says that he doesn't want to know his future. The vision itself is of Mat stabbing Rand with the Shadar Logoth dagger, and it is a horrifying revelation for Min. There are some visual inconsistencies with what Min sees versus how it actually goes down. I guess it's supposed to be a representation of what happens rather than a one-for-one, but if that's the case, I feel like it wasn't clearly conveyed to the audience. One day, Liandrin decides to let Mat go, telling him how worthless he is on his way out. Things are almost too good to be true, and Mat doesn't really know what to do until he recruits Min to be his traveling companion. It's revealed that Liandrin isn't really letting Mat free, as Min is in on the plan and is instructed to guide him to Cairhien. Min has made a deal with the devil, as the Shamael promised to remove her visions for delivering Mat to the designated location. This essentially makes Min a dark friend, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. She eventually comes clean to Mat and tells him that he is going to kill Rand. I'm not really sure how they're going to proceed with her character after this. At this point, Mat's storyline really goes on the back burner, and we don't see much of him until he reaches Cairhien. As I mentioned in the Perrin section, it feels like his character is in waiting until the next plot event is to take place. If the season had more time, I would have loved to see Mat and Min on their journey together, to flesh out the characters and their dynamic a bit more. While playing Yahtzee, Mat is found by Rand. As the two are reunited, Mat is incredibly happy to see his friend. He sees bumping into Rand as his opportunity to right his wrongs and redeem himself. I think the fact that it is Rand is particularly important for Mat, because it was Rand who looked after him on their journey to Tar Valon in the first season. Of all the people Mat abandoned, I think he feels most guilty about abandoning Rand, because Rand had every chance to abandon him, and he never did, standing by his side the entire time. When he tells Rand that he wants to go with him to Falm, he is entirely genuine, and that's why he is so heartbroken when Min tells him about her vision.
You killed Rand? Yeah, with that dagger. The ruby on the golden hilt. In Falm, that's where he wants you to go, right?
Hearing that Mat shouldn't go with his friend because Rand is in danger from him is soul-crushing, and makes every single thought he had about his friends being better off without him feel validated.
We're not better off without you either, man.
He tries to do the right thing by leaving Rand hanging out to dry, even though it kills him to do so. However, the Dark isn't going to leave things up to chance, and Mat is knocked out and brought to Falm against his will. Mat then has to endure some temptations. The first is a psychedelic tea that makes the drinkers see their past lives and who they are at their core. Feeling thirsty, Mat drinks the tea, only to be bombarded by some terrible visions, essentially showing him all of his worst fears about the kind of person that he is. I thought this scene was just okay. One, because if I drank the tea from a Forsaken and it told me how bad a guy I am, and that I might as well just join the Dark, I wouldn't believe it because of where the information is coming from. Secondly, and I know this breaks my rule about separating the show from the books, but there's a similar sequence to this in the book, and Mat's reaction felt way more impactful to me in that iteration. The second temptation is the Shadar Logoth dagger, presented to Mat by none other than Padan Fain. Fain tries to play on Mat's insecurities and get him to give in to the Dark. However, as Mat knows from Min's vision that he stabs Rand with the dagger, he's never going to willingly pick it up, because doing so would be Mat knowingly doing something that will hurt his friend. Fain thinks it is only a matter of time before Mat breaks, and so he leaves Mat and the dagger alone in the room together to get reacquainted. Instead of picking up the dagger directly, he only touches it using other items. He ties it to the end of a bed pole and uses it as a spear. He then uses the dagger to burn through the locked door, which brings me to an issue I have with the dagger, and that is the seemingly inconsistent way that it works.
What are the rules? What are the rules?
In this instance, and a little later on, Mat uses it to burn through and corrupt objects. But in the case of last season's finale, when Padan Fain uses it to stab Loyal, it acts as a regular dagger, as opposed to the super evil corrupted dagger it is when it stabs Rand. I think the biggest inconsistency is the Loyal stabbing, but as a viewer, I feel like that can make it confusing in trying to understand what exactly the dagger does. After escaping Fain, Mat runs into Perrin and company, who have no way of opening the Horn of Valir, which they need to get to Rand. Mat takes the horn and sets out to find Rand and give it to him, setting him up for a shining moment and one of the best scenes of the season. As Mat finds himself cornered by the Seanchan, the realization sets in that he won't be able to get the horn to Rand, and that someone needs to blow it. When Mat decides to blow the horn, I think it is him, in a way, accepting that he can be a hero. Of course, if you asked Mat if he was a hero, he would deny it, and say he was just doing what was necessary not to end up dead. When he blows the horn, the heroes of the horn emerge behind him as time slows to a crawl. The heroes tell him that they have fought beside him countless times, and that he is one of them. For Mat, who has struggled all season long, toiling with the idea of who he is, if he is a good person, and whether or not his friends are better off without him, he gets the answers that he has been searching for, as it is revealed that even though the darkest aspects of his personality are a part of him, they do not define him, as he chooses to do everything in his power to help his friends.
For us, it's Mat blowing the horn. So how can we show that this is about who his character is, that he's a man who doesn't think he's a hero and actually is, and so letting that be kind of the shining moment in that arc for him.
I feel like this moment is genuinely terrific and is a great conclusion to Mat's arc this season. I think it is one of the best scenes in the show to date and is immensely cathartic as Mat overcomes his self-doubts.
But all we've done since we signed the Book of Novices is clean. Being a novice is a rite of passage. Every single Aes Sedai's done it, even Amalek.
Nynaeve and Egwene are two of the characters with the largest focus this season. They essentially each had an episode dedicated to exploring them and their arc, with Nynaeve's coming in episode 3 during her acceptance test, and Egwene's coming in episode 6, as she is subjected to the horrors of what it means to be a Damane. These episodes and the performances from the actresses Zoe Robbins and Madeline Madden are some of the season's highest highs. When we first pick up with the pair, we learn that after the events of the season 1 finale, they went to the White Tower to study under the Aes Sedai as novices. They each have their own reason for going to the White Tower, with Egwene having a genuine interest in becoming an Aes Sedai and growing more powerful with the One Power. We see her eyeing the 7-colored stole of the Amyrlin seat, showing that she intends to grow as much as possible while she is there. She even later reveals that one of the reasons she is trying so hard is because of the guilt she feels about not being there for Rand when he fought the Dark One. She thinks if she had been stronger, she could have fought alongside him, and maybe if she had, he would still be alive. Nynaeve's reason for being at the tower is because she wants to protect Egwene. Despite having a deep-seated dislike of Aes Sedai, and having no interest in becoming one, Nynaeve endures her time there for Egwene. After Mat's departure and Rand's apparent death, Nynaeve clings to Egwene, still feeling responsible for them from her time as a wisdom. She feels like she failed Mat and Rand, but she refuses to fail Egwene in the same way. However, despite Egwene wanting to be at the White Tower and to one day become an Aes Sedai, and Nynaeve hating almost every moment there, it is Nynaeve that seems to be getting all of the focus and attention from their teachers. Nynaeve's displays of raw power in the first season have become well known, and she has piqued the interest of every Aes Sedai in the tower, as they have high hopes for her. Egwene feels like she is in Nynaeve's shadow, and is being ignored, even though she is putting in way more effort.
Egwene is strong, stronger than most. But you have 10 times that power, Nynaeve, whether you want it or not.
Dare I say it, but methinks Egwene is a little jelly. Nynaeve and Egwene's storylines are so tied to the One Power, and as a result, most of the channeling we see is featured in their arcs. The visual effects of channeling have been slightly reworked this season compared to the first. In Season 1, the One Power was this white wisp effect, with the exception of the male channelers, where there was black mixed in to represent the taint. This season, however, the show explains more of the intricacies of channeling, and that there are 5 main threads that constitute the One Power.
What are the 5 threads of the One Power?
Air, earth, fire, spirit, and water.
Each of these threads is visualized slightly differently, with different colors and textures to the weaves. There are also moments when you can see a channeler pulling the One Power directly from something, like when Rand draws a thread of fire from Lan's torch. I think the channeling looks way more dynamic this season, and given how important the One Power is to the series, that is a huge boon. Despite everyone having high expectations for Nynaeve, she hasn't been living up to them, as she has developed a block which prevents her from channeling. Now, a block is fairly common for women who the Aes Sedai refer to as Wilders, women who knowingly use the One Power and haven't had any formal training, despite their age. I don't think the show does a very good job of explaining Nynaeve's block, as she can still channel, but just needs to meet a specific requirement in order to do so. In Nynaeve's case, she can only access the One Power when she is angry, and that's why she was able to do those massive explosions of power in Season 1. I could be wrong, but I feel like show-only viewers may have been confused as to why Nynaeve suddenly can't channel, and I think they should have been more explicit about how her block works. One of the Aes Sedai who was trying to win over Nynaeve is Liandrin. Liandrin saw firsthand how powerful Nynaeve is, and wants to harness that power for herself. She sees that the other Aes Sedai are unable to break through Nynaeve's block, and because Liandrin isn't allowed to teach novices, she puts Nynaeve on the fast track to becoming an accepted, which she is allowed to teach. Liandrin and Nynaeve have a very interesting relationship throughout the season. At first it seems like Liandrin is trying to recruit Nynaeve to the Red Aja, but later it is revealed that her plan was to turn her to the dark. She tries to win her over by showing Nynaeve the power Aes Sedai possess in healing, something that is of great interest to Nynaeve. Even though Liandrin is a dark friend, you get the sense that she has a respect for Nynaeve, and she believes that she can truly be something special. With Nynaeve's trial at hand, we get some truly terrific television. What I enjoy so much about big set pieces like the Accepted Test is that it gives us a chance to really examine Nynaeve as a character. As Nynaeve enters the room with the arches, there is a feeling of foreboding, as Liandrin, Shiriam, and Lyanna explain what it means to take on this test. The first arch, we get to examine Nynaeve through her past. She is a child again and is reunited with her late parents, only for them to find themselves immediately in danger. The vision feels entirely real, as Nynaeve runs for her life. It makes sense that this is the moment she was taken back to, as losing her parents set her down an entirely different path in life. When the way back appears, Nynaeve is faced with a choice: stay with her parents and try to save them, or to return. It becomes clear that the arches are meant to test a woman's dedication to the tower, and their willingness to abandon all else that is important to them in its name. As she finds herself back in the real world, she still has her injuries, indicating to the audience that the danger is real. The second arch represents Nynaeve's present-day worries. As the wisdom of the two rivers, she had a responsibility to be there for her community, and to help them when they needed it. When she left to follow Rand and company, she left the two rivers to fend for themselves, without a healer.
You've been gone a long time, Nynaeve. You don't understand what these herbs can do.
You abandoned us. I may not be a wisdom, but I'm the one who stayed.
No doubt she feels an immense amount of guilt about this, and the second arch shows her worst fears coming to fruition, as the two rivers has fallen victim to a plague, and there is no one there to help them. As the way back appears, Nynaeve once again abandons the two rivers, claiming that she just needs to go buy some cigarettes, and that she will be back in just a bit.
That I should also step out to the restroom for a moment.
She's coming right back.
While I think as a concept this might be my favorite of the three arches, I didn't feel like we quite got to spend enough time there as I would have liked. It still hits pretty hard, but I feel like it could have been even better. The third arch sees Nynaeve getting pranked. In a trippy sequence, Nynaeve is faked out into believing that she exited the arch, when the reality is she is still in it and being tested. She decides that being an Aes Sedai is not for her, and she leaves the White Tower, only to come across Lan. As she stares lovingly into his eyes, she doesn't notice the way back closing, leaving her locked in the arch and failing the test. I think the test in this arch is giving her something she wants more than anything, and forcing her to choose the tower over it, which she doesn't. After failing the test, she lives out literal years in this reality, even going so far as to having a child. Even though she seemingly has the life she would have wished for, there's a tiny moment where you almost get the sense that she second guesses abandoning Egwene and the tower. Not long after that, she is attacked by Trollocs. As she tries to defend her daughter, it almost feels like a repeat of her own childhood trauma when her parents tried to protect her. With Lan and her friends dying, she is engulfed in grief and screams, unleashing her power and opening a second way back. It's a pretty heartbreaking moment as Nynaeve cradles her daughter and runs through the gate, only to end up on the other end and beholding nothing. I think Nynaeve's accepted test is one of the highlights of the season, and really allows us to explore Nynaeve as a character.
Oh, what the hell? Where am I?
Just because Nynaeve left the arches doesn't mean she can go back to normal. Even though only a day went by in the real world, Nynaeve was in there for years, and was deeply affected by everything that happened there.
We treat episode 204 for Nynaeve almost like a miscarriage story.
I'm really glad that the show took the time to let the aftermath of what Nynaeve went through to hang in the air for a while, as given the fast pacing that the show has to operate at, it could have all too easily been swept under the rug. There's a great conversation between Nynaeve and Liandrin when they are discussing these feelings after being in the arches, and how in order to make it through life, you need to hold on to something, not let go for as long as you can. Knowing that Liandrin's son is dying, Nynaeve asks if she has found something new to hold on to. Instead of answering, Liandrin tells Nynaeve about Falm and Perrin being kidnapped, signaling that the new thing she is holding on to and chosen to devote her life to is the dark. I feel like this is a nice subtle bit of writing here, and once you know Liandrin's true allegiance, it works even better. While Nynaeve was being tutored by Liandrin and sent to Trauma Central, Egwene was making friends with the daughter heir of Andor, Elaine Tricond. Elaine is a welcome addition to the cast, as she comes from a different walk of life than a lot of our characters. Even though she is of noble birth, we still see early on that she is caring and a good friend, as she tries to help Egwene grieve when they thought Nynaeve was dead. And when she hears that Egwene and Nynaeve are leaving the tower to go help Perrin, she doesn't hesitate to drop everything and tag along with them to help in any way that she can. The actual reveal of Liandrin being a Darkfriend is well executed, as she knocks out the trio in one burst. Unfortunately though, I wish that she had waited to knock them out until after they exited the ways, because by doing it before, I feel like it creates some issues. Liandrin is actively shielding the three girls from the one power.
You're shielded and bound.
Shielding is to be actively channeling, and whenever someone channels in the ways, Majin Shin will attack them. In the show, Aes Sedai are confirmed to not know how to tie off a shield, so she can't have done that unless she was shown by a Forsaken. The only Forsaken that she has had contact with at this point is Ishamael, and because he is a male channeler, he would not be able to show her how to tie off a shield. I feel like all of these issues could have been avoided if Liandrin just attacked the girls as soon as they exited the Waygate. It feels like in some instances, the show plays loosey-goosey with some of the established rules of the world.
What are the rules? What are the rules?
Liandrin gives the 3 girls to the Seanchan, but thanks to some channeling by Elaine, the girls are able to make a run for it. However, it turns out Egwene is the slowest of the 3, and is captured while the other 2 escape. Egwene is collared, and the Seanchan try to make her a damane, which is a woman who can channel, that someone called a Suldam controls through something called an Adom. Egwene's Suldam is a woman named Rhenna, who wastes no time in breaking in her new pet. And a pet, a dog more specifically, is how the Suldam see their damane. The damane live in a place called the Kennels, and the Suldam takes great pride in breaking them in, training them to obey their masters.
Good girl.
There's also a sort of perverse affection that a Suldam feels towards her damane, and Rhenna shows this to Egwene a few times throughout their time together. It's interesting, as Rhenna praises Egwene for being powerful and special, which is something that she desperately wanted to hear when she was at the White Tower.
I hope they told you at your White Tower just how special you are.
Even though she is horrified by her treatment and absolutely hates Rhenna, she can't help but feel a little validation and pride when Rhenna tells her this. Egwene's first instinct once in captivity is to kill Rhenna and make a break for it. However, when she tries to grab a pitcher and use it to bash Rhenna's head, she is unable to even pick it up, as she falls over in excruciating pain. It turns out, a damane cannot touch something that they view as a weapon, and every hurt a Suldam feels, the damane feels it double. Rhenna tasks Egwene with pouring a glass of water, a simple act that will demonstrate that she no longer views the pitcher as a weapon. As a power move, Rhenna leaves the Adam hanging in full reach of Egwene, tempting her to try and touch it to free herself. Once again, she falls into complete agony as she learns how hopeless her situation is. Throughout the episode, we get to see Egwene struggle to try and resist Rhenna and the power of the Adom. It is brutal to watch as we see Egwene endure so much pain as she tries her best to cling on to her identity. When Rhenna pushes her to the very edge, she finds her breaking point. When we finally see Egwene able to hold the pitcher and pour the water, for the first few moments, it almost feels like a triumph. Given a different context, Egwene valiantly enduring all of this pain and trying over and over to achieve her goal would feel heroic when she finally succeeded. However, once you remember that by Egwene achieving her goal, it signifies the exact opposite, as it shows that her spirit is truly broken.
One thing we really wanted to build towards was the moment that the character of Egwene finally breaks and is able to touch the pitcher and know that she no longer actually views it as a weapon. That's the moment she knows she's fully broken, and that's the moment where she breaks down emotionally too.
Rhenna unceremoniously pouring the cup of water on the ground only further emphasizes this point, as all of Egwene's hard work was truly meaningless. The time spent dedicated to Egwene's breaking was a treat to watch, and really illustrates how deplorable the Seanchan are for what they do to women who can channel. It is one of the highlights of the season, and has the audience fully invested in Egwene's journey. And that is why it pains me to say that I had some pretty major issues with the way Egwene's story played out for the rest of the season. After devoting so much time and effort to show the audience that Egwene is well and truly broken, in the following episodes they walk a lot of this back. In the lead up to the finale, almost every single interaction Egwene has with Rhenna is her actively defying her. She disobeys Rhenna in private and public, and even goes so far as to tell Rhenna that she is going to kill her.
I will kill you.
And Rhenna, who was so quick to punish and discipline Egwene in the lead up to the breaking, now seems gun-shy. Why doesn't she just let her have it? It makes the impact of Egwene finally being able to pour the water feel undermined. I think if the show wanted to keep some defiance to Egwene, they could have done it in a much more subtle manner. I thought having Egwene braiding her hair was a nice touch, and was a subtle way to show the audience that there is still some fight left in her as she gathers strength from her community. It also serves as a nice connection to Nynaeve, who at this point is actively trying to save her. I think having the braid without the other more overt signs of resistance would have conveyed what they wanted to, without undermining all of the great work that they did prior. By having Egwene act so defiantly, they put her in a situation where the only way she can escape is by having the plot convenience of a trebuchet breaking up the party before any meaningful action can be taken against her. I also did not really like Egwene freeing herself from the Adom, as I feel like it created a few issues. My first issue with Egwene freeing herself from Rhenna's control by collaring Rhenna is that I am not convinced it makes complete sense. How was she able to pick up the Adom if her intentions were to use it to put it on Rhenna, and use its power to hurt her until she released Egwene? Also, even though Egwene is now Rhenna's Suldom, Rhenna is still Egwene's. Because of this, how was Egwene able to channel and lift Rhenna onto the hook where she is choked out? Shouldn't it have worked like Rhenna's punch did, a clear attempt to hurt her Suldom that was reflected back at her? I feel like in the most generous interpretations of this, it is incredibly messy. This moment works best if you don't put much thought into what's actually going on, and just kind of go with it. It's another instance of the show flubbing the rules of the world a bit, which hurts it in my opinion.
What are the rules? What are the rules?
Other than the logistical aspects, I also don't like what it does to Nynaeve and Elaine's story. After Egwene is captured, Nynaeve and Elaine spend their entire time in Falme doing everything they can to try and rescue her. By Egwene freeing herself, it leaves Nynaeve and Elaine's story dangling, as everything they did in the name of freeing Egwene is rendered meaningless. Raima's sacrifice doesn't matter, because figuring out how to unlock the Adom doesn't amount to anything. Without being involved in Egwene being freed, the finale for Nynaeve and Elaine amounts to Nynaeve doing some Suldom cosplay and Elaine taking an arrow to the knee.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
For the rest of it, they're just sitting around as the battle rages on around them. And my final major issue with Egwene freeing herself is that it feels like it goes against one of the main themes of this season. That theme being that the characters need each other and are stronger together than they are apart. This theme is introduced early on through Perrin's letter.
The basic idea is that if you stand alone with a shield, much of your body's still exposed. But if you stand in a group covering each other with your shields, nothing can touch any of you. It made me think of us, and how together we face the impossible.
It is also a big part of the character arcs for Moiraine, Rand, Nynaeve, and Mat, as they need to come to terms with letting people help them and doing their best to be there for others. It almost feels like the show is saying that all the characters need help from their friends, except Egwene.
I came to save you, but it looks like you didn't need it.
Even before this moment, there was some earlier messaging saying that Egwene can do things on her own.
The truth is, you don't need my protection.
So yeah, for all those reasons, I really don't like Egwene freeing herself. Even though I really took issue with the way they chose to end Egwene's story this season. For the rest of it, I thought her and Nynaeve were massive highlights.
I will never serve him in 1,000 lives. I never have. I know that. I'm sure of it.
Rand's portrayal in the show seems to be at the center of most of the discourse following the airing of Season 2. I will try to ease into the hot button topics as I break down Rand's journey this season. I feel like the setup for Rand is actually pretty great this season. After the showdown at the Eye of the World, Rand left his friends behind, and has Moiraine tell everyone that he is dead. It's said that when men who can channel go mad, they kill their loved ones first. He leaves as a means of protecting his friends, as he doesn't want to do anything that will put them in harm's way. Even after all of these months, he is still haunted by the idea of killing his friends, and this anxiety manifests itself in his dreams. We later learn that part of the reason he is having this same horrific recurring dream is because the Shamael is using it to try and corrupt Rand, showing him all he has to lose in the hopes of breaking him and getting him to join the Dark. Rand is still coming to grips with being the Dragon Reborn and a man who can channel, neither of which are things that he wants to be. He is brimming with so much power and has no idea how to control it, causing it to pour out of him and in some instances leading to destruction. Rand is horrified by this and has set out to find himself a teacher, someone who can help him stop channeling altogether, or at the very least, someone to help him control it. As a result, he has put a plan into action as he is working as an orderly for a sanitarium to help men who have started to go mad from past traumas. As he works there and sees the state of these men, he feels tremendous empathy for them, and in the back of his mind, he knows that he might share the same fate as them. He feels like in some way, this is where he belongs.
Rand is working at a place where he's taking care of people who struggle with their mental health, and that feels like the only place where he can actually be himself. And once he goes out of those walls, he has to hide himself.
One of the patients, a former blade master named Errol, is under Rand's care. Through his interactions with Errol, Rand treats the man with kindness and genuinely wants to help him as much as he can, despite that not being his main objective. We get a small line of dialogue where we learn that Errol has returned Rand's kindness by showing him some sword forms.
I tried to sneak my sword in again sometime.
You can teach me a few more forms.
We also see a little bit of Rand's desperation as he tracks down a fellow orderly and beats him to a pulp so that he can take his job. The reason Rand wanted this job was because the orderly he beat up was in charge of watching over Logain, the gentled false dragon. Rand sees Logain as the key to solving so much of what he is struggling with, but Logain is not about to give it up for free. When he was being paraded through the streets of Tar Valon, he saw Rand and the immense amount of power emanating from him. He knows what Rand is, and instead of just helping him outright, he asks for something in return. Rand is set on a fetch quest to get Logain a bottle of Gildan wine. He enlists the help of Selene, the innkeeper and his current canoodling partner. During the time jump, Rand and Selene became a bit of an item. We now know Selene's true identity as Lanfear, one of the Forsaken, and I think this revelation makes her interactions with Rand as Selene all the more interesting. Rand mentions that he is with Selene initially to serve as a distraction so that he can try and forget about Egwene and the life that he had before, knowing that if he were to return, he would be putting them in danger. Selene, or rather Lanfear, says that being with Rand helps her to remember a relationship long since gone. The relationship she is talking about is the love affair Lanfear had with Luz Theron. Whenever she talks about her past love in a roundabout way, it's actually about Rand. By becoming romantically involved with Rand, Lanfear is getting to experience that same love that she has long craved.
You'll help me remember, and I'll help you forget.
In order to get the wine, Lanfear gets them into a noble's party, where Rand is dressed to the nines. Rand's red coat with gold herons embroidered on it is ridiculously cool. It's a legitimate shame that he only wears it in a few scenes. I gotta say, I'm with Lanfear on this one.
Leave it on.
While wearing his incredibly stylish coat, Rand draws the attentions of the Cairhienin nobles, who are all wondering who this new mystery man is. Rand makes it clear that he has no interest in playing the political games of Cairhien, and when he is given a formal invitation with massive implications whether or not he accepts or rejects it, he decides to do neither and throw it in the fire, which only makes the nobles more intrigued. It's a really fun scene, and I wish we got to see more of this as Rand needs to slowly learn how to be a ruler and deal with the scheming of all the lords and ladies. After Rand accidentally burns down Lanfear's inn, the two head up to the mountains for a romantic getaway. A fade finds them in the night, and Rand is forced to channel to kill it. Lanfear does a fantastic job of manipulating Rand in this moment, as she plays it off as being initially shocked and horrified that Rand is a man that can channel, when she obviously knew that the whole time. By initially showing that she is scared of Rand's channeling, it allows her to make a big show of accepting him and telling him he is not a monster. Rand is incredibly vulnerable in this moment, and expresses how a lot of people think of men who can channel as monsters, and he doesn't want Selene to see him that way. It allows us to see more of how this is messing with Rand's mental state, as he struggles to maintain the image of the type of man that he wants to be.
I haven't gone mad! I haven't gone mad!
He realizes that he cares for Selene, and doesn't want to hurt her, as she is someone that he loves. When Lanfear hears Rand say this, she is positively elated, and does her best not to overplay the moment.
You said you love me.
She invites him into her cozy little cabin, and shows him that she is into bondage. The reveal of Selene being Lanfear is absolutely fantastic. As the audience is clued into her identity, her tying up Rand takes on a more sinister connotation. And then out of nowhere, Moiraine stabs her and slits her throat, allowing for her and Rand to make a run for it. The fact that Lanfear is able to heal herself after such grievous injuries really helps to build this sense of dread in the audience, as they wonder just how powerful the Forsaken are. Lanfear's actress, Natasha O'Keeffe, is phenomenal, and does a great job portraying the two different personas of Selene and Lanfear. When the Selene mask is off, Lanfear feels incredibly powerful, and has a casual cruelty about her. There is an eeriness to the scene as she charges into the night to track down Rand. Lanfear is the breakout character of the season, and her presence does a ton to elevate Rand's storyline. Knowing that Rand can't run from her in his dreams, Lanfear waits for him to eventually go beddy bye. When Rand does go to bed, he wonders if he has stepped into a dream or a nightmare, as Lanfear appears in her best Dommy-Mommy regalia. The discussion that follows is great, and really builds an interesting dynamic between the two characters. Despite being sworn to the dark, Lanfear genuinely cares for Rand, and is looking out for him as long as it it coincides with her vision of their future together, and she tells Rand some legitimate truths about the state of things.
Moiraine, the Aes Sedai who's done nothing since you met her but try to deceive and control you. Do you think it's a coincidence that you decided to come to Kyrie, to the one place she still holds influence? She's had you dancing on her strings this whole time.
The rest of the season plays on this dynamic, as Rand is left wondering just how much he can trust her. Also, it has got to be said that my boy Rand is absolutely yoked, and his powers of persuasion are having an effect on Lanfear. And this is where we start to get to some of the issues people have with Rand's portrayal this season. There's an idea circulating that Rand has been nerfed pretty badly in the show, not only in terms of power, but in terms of his agency and his ability to drive the show's narrative. I definitely think there's something to these criticisms, but I do not believe in them as staunchly as a lot of people. One of the criticisms is that Rand has become a damsel in distress throughout much of Season 2. Whenever he is in a precarious situation, he usually finds himself incapacitated in some way, and needs someone else to rescue him. He is saved by Moiraine when she stabs Lanfear, and even though Rand probably wasn't in any real danger from Lanfear in this moment, it is very much depicted as Moiraine saving him, and him coming across as a bit clueless. He is then rescued by Lanfear as she breaks him out of the Aes Sedai holding cell, and beats Swan Sanche. He is then combo rescued by Egwene, who fights off Ishamael, and Moiraine, who breaks the shield containing him. When watching the show, it doesn't feel like he is being saved that many times, but when you list them all out, it feels like a considerable pattern. One of the major themes was that Rand can't beat the dark alone, and he needs the help of his friends.
With Egwene and Perrin and Nynaeve and Mat all coming to him at the end and ultimately being the reasons that he's able to survive that final battle and defeat Ishamael, he realizes that he can't push all his friends and loved ones away either.
But it almost feels like they overdid it a bit and left Rand with only some crumbs. In terms of not having much agency in the show, he essentially makes two major decisions this season on his own, and both are slightly undercut. The first is his plan to work his way as an orderly and get Logain to teach him how to use the One Power. This initially seems to be all his doing, but it is later revealed that the only reason Rand has any access to Logain is because Moiraine was responsible for placing him in Cairhien. Also, when she goes to visit Logain, she makes threats and promises in order to ensure he helps Rand, so that later when Rand goes back and Logain does offer him some lessons, the audience is left believing that Logain is helping Rand because of the things Moiraine said, rather than the things that Rand did.
You're the reason I'm here instead of ascending the White Tower.
You will teach him everything you know about channeling. And at the end, if I'm satisfied with his progress, I'll leave the knife with you.
This undercuts Rand's agency and makes it seem like he is Moraine's puppet. I do think that this is a bit deliberate though, and can add to the feeling of Rand being used by Aes Sedai, which I think is a good idea. I think if Rand had more moments where he went rogue or did something Moiraine didn't guide him into, I wouldn't really have a problem with her being the puppet master for the Logain situation, as I do feel like it is purposeful storytelling. The other major decision Rand makes is to go to Falme to save Egwene. And while he does successfully go to Falme thanks to Lanfear's help, Egwene doesn't actually need him, and it's actually Rand who needs Egwene. I don't think this one is a huge problem and could have been fixed if Rand had more reasons to go to Falme than just to free Egwene. Like if he knew Ishamael was there, and part of the reason he went to Falme was to confront him, I think that would make his motivation more satisfying, as he accomplishes at least one of the things that he set out to do. Another moment where it feels like some of Rand's agency is taken away from him and given to another character is when Moiraine summons the fire dragon to announce the return of the dragon. The prophecies are specific that the dragon will proclaim himself in the sky at Falme.
But why Falme of all places?
The dragon is supposed to proclaim himself there.
But Rand doesn't proclaim himself at all. Moiraine even slightly changes the words when she decides to proclaim him.
Above the watcher shall the dragon be proclaimed.
I think this would have been better if when Rand defeated Ishamael, he had a big explosion of power burst from him, and maybe that takes the shape of a dragon to declare his arrival. In post-show interviews, it seems that Rand, having no choice in being publicly proclaimed, will tie into future storylines and potentially create a rift between him and Moiraine. And paired with him feeling like Moiraine's puppet in Cairhien, I think they are doing a good job building a possible disconnect between the two characters, which I think is good on its own. However, given the context of the season, I think they should have given Rand more moments to assuage some of the feelings fans have about his diminished agency. One of the major complaints about Rand has to do with his power level, and some of his book moments not playing out nearly how many fans hoped they would. Once again, I think there are some merit to these criticisms, but I do not think they are fully immersion breaking for me like they are for others. One moment that upset people was Rand's encounter with Turak. In the books, there is a big epic showdown as Rand and Turak cross blades, and we get to see a blade master at work. Admittedly, it is a really cool scene, and a favorite of many book readers. In the show, they didn't have the necessary setup of Rand training the sword with Lan, so any version of Rand 1v1ing Turak would not have worked in the show. I think the scene we actually get, with it being built up like Rand and Turak are going to fight, only for him to slaughter all of the Shan-Chan with the one power, is a really great moment. It gives Rand a scene where he can show off some of his power, as he one-shots Turak and his forces. Is it sad we didn't get a fan favorite moment from the book? Yeah, and I think it's valid to feel that way, but I think the scene we got in the show is still really cool in its own right, and makes more sense for the context of the show. I honestly didn't have a problem with this scene and actually really enjoy it. The much larger issue that I have seen online concerns Rand's fight, or lack thereof, with the Shamael. Rand is neutralized pretty quick during the encounter, as he is daggered by Mat and shielded by the Damane. For most of the scene, Rand is laying on the ground, bleeding out, while Egwene steps in and fights his Shamael. When Rand is eventually healed and steps up for his big climactic fight with the Father of Lies, it is done with very little fanfare and lasts all of 2 seconds. Shamael is attacking Egwene for a considerable amount of time, making their conflict feel epic, where Rand just kind of walks up and stabs him. Shamael sees Rand coming and doesn't so much as move out of the way. It looks like Shamael just lets Rand stab him, and I've seen speculation that this is because Shamael wanted to die. But even if that is the case, it really does nothing to make Rand's moment any more satisfying. I really think the show shot themselves in the foot a bit with this one, because I feel like a lot of people's complaints with this scene could have been so easily mitigated if you just had Rand and Shamael duke it out for a few minutes and show a struggle in their conflict. As it is, even though Rand was the one to kill Shamael, it feels more like Egwene's victory, because the principal amount of time dedicated to the fight was her fending off Ishii. Also, I feel like the show fumbled their big thematic through line a bit in the end. This idea that the characters need each other if they are to defeat the dark rung a little hollow with how the fight on the tower played out. The show wants us to believe that they all needed to be there if they were to achieve victory, and that doesn't really feel like it was the case. The only thing Mat does is stab and injure Rand. If anything, they would have been better if Mat wasn't there, which goes against his entire journey this season.
We're not better off without you either, Mat.
Elaine healed Rand, but that was only necessary because of Mat. Nynaeve did literally nothing. Perrin held a magic shield so he could feel like he was helping. Really, the only person Rand needed there was Egwene. I feel like they really should have more thoroughly examined how each character's journey tied into the final confrontation, so that it better reflected the theme of the season. I know I just levied a lot of criticism the show's way, but allow me to take a step back and explain why, despite my issues, I still have hope that the show will do justice by Rand's character in future seasons. For starters, I think they have done a fantastic job with his characterization, which is one of the most important aspects. If all of the fans' complaints about Rand's power level were remedied, and he was 1v1ing Blade Masters and single-handedly killing Forsaken, the audience still wouldn't care if they didn't care about Rand as a character. But the reason people are so disappointed about Rand seemingly being nerfed is because they care so much about the character. From my perspective, they have already done the hard part and got the audience invested in him. Now they just need to follow through on the easy part and give him the moments worthy of his character. And trust me, there are plenty great moments for his character to come. Also, the show has expressed a desire to do a slow build in regards to Rand's powers, which I think can definitely work for the show. It allows him to be the chosen one, but not a chosen one who just gets everything immediately given to them. He has to work for it. And once he untaps his potential, forget about it. Rafe has already gone on the record that next season there will be a Rand-centric episode, similarly to how there were Nynaeve and Egwene-centric episodes this season.
Next season is a really big Rand Perrin season for us.
It feels like the show will give Rand the focus he deserves moving forward. And if you aren't feeling quite as optimistic as I am, that's fair enough. I think at the end of the day, we all want to see a fantastic television show, and successfully adapting Rand is crucial in order to achieve this. I have faith that the writers know this just as much as we do.
You will be putting this off for years. Each time saying just one more piece to put in place. You're delaying the inevitable.
I feel like the show improved this season in just about every facet. Part of that is due to the poor quality of season 1, as it was plagued by so many misfortunes, but even still, it is great to see that the Wheel of Time is trending in the right direction. I honestly feel like it has all the makings of a great TV show, and if the showrunners manage to tweak a few things here and there, iron out the in-world inconsistencies they've had, avoid their worst impulses, and just let the characters tell the story, this show can be truly something special. Even though I was harsh in some of my criticisms, it all comes from a place of love. I see the potential this show has, and I'm really passionate about it, as I hope it manages to live up to it. Even with my issues, I honestly enjoyed the season from start to finish, being thoroughly entertained throughout. If I were to rank the season as a whole, I would probably give it a mid to high 7. I am even more excited about season 3, as it is set to adapt the 4th book in the series, The Shadow Rising, which is considered by many to be one of the best books in the entire series. In a previous video, I asked the question about whether there was still hope for the Wheel of Time show, and I think season 2 has answered that question with a resounding yes. Now, if only we could get Amazon to give them 10 episodes a season. If you somehow made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you for watching. I'm not sure what it is with me lately, but I just keep finding myself having so much to say about these recent shows. If you liked the video, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. It really helps out the channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.